They told you the WNBA was just a moment, a trend, a blip, something that would fade once the novelty wore off. They were wrong. And now, season 30, the bill is coming due. Not for the players, not for the fans. For everyone who underestimated what this league was quietly becoming. Because what's happening in the WNBA right now isn't a story about basketball anymore. It's a story about power, about identity, about what happens when a sport that spent 3 decades begging for attention suddenly has more attention than it knows what to do with. And nobody, not the players, not the owners, not the league itself, was prepared for this moment. Let that sink in. For 29 seasons, WNBA players fought in near-empty arenas. They played for smaller paychecks. They flew commercial while their NBA counterparts took private jets. They gave interviews to empty press rooms. They built something beautiful in the dark for an audience that the rest of the sports world insisted didn't exist. And then, almost overnight, everything changed. The cameras found them. The crowd showed up. The internet exploded. And suddenly the very thing these women had been fighting for, visibility, respect, a seat at the table, arrived all at once, like a flood instead of a rainfall. Now here's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. What happens to a league that wasn't built to handle this? Season 30 doesn't open with quiet optimism. It opens with noise. Deafening, chaotic, beautiful, terrifying noise. Ticket prices that have tripled in some markets. National broadcast deals that didn't exist 5 years ago. Sponsorship money flooding in from brands that once laughed at women's basketball. And at the center of that noise, rivalries that have crossed the line from sports into something closer to cultural warfare. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Aya Wilson, Breanna Stewart. Paige Bueckers stepping into her first professional season, carrying the weight of a generation's expectations on her back. These aren't just basketball players anymore. They're symbols. Clark symbolizes something to one half of the fan base. Reese symbolizes something to the other. Wilson has spent years being the most dominant player in the league, and she's watching a wave of new stars arrive and threaten to rewrite the narrative she built with her own hands. That's not just drama. That's a pressure cooker with the lid sealed shut. And season 30 is about to turn up the heat. Here's what the highlight reels won't show you. The stuff that happens before the cameras turn on. The conversations in locker rooms that never make it to press conferences. The quiet resentment building between veterans who gave everything to build this league and a new generation of players who walked into a house they didn't construct. That tension is real. It's electric, and it's going to find this entire season. Because here's the thing about attention. Real, sustained, mainstream attention. It doesn't just celebrate you. It judges you. It picks you apart. It amplifies every mistake, every conflict, every uncomfortable truth. 3 years ago, a hard foul in a WNBA game was just basketball. Today, that same foul becomes a 5-day news cycle, a Twitter war, a think piece in 3 major publications, and a debate on ESPN's First Take. That is the world these players now live in, and some of them are thriving in it. Others are quietly suffocating. But the most dangerous storyline of season 30 isn't the rivalries you already know about. It's the one forming right now, quietly, underneath the surface. A fault line that could either push the WNBA into its greatest era or crack the foundation the league has spent 30 years building. And before this season ends, that fault line is going to split wide open. You need to understand what's really happening here. Not the version the highlight packages sell you. Not the Twitter narrative. Not the hot takes. The real story. Because the WNBA is standing at the edge of something nobody has ever seen before in women's sports. And the next step either launches a league into history, or changes it forever in ways that can't be undone. This is season 30, and nothing about it is going to be safe. Let's talk about the moment everything changed. Not gradually, not slowly, overnight, because that's actually how it happened. And understanding that moment explains everything that's tearing the WNBA apart and pulling it together simultaneously right now. Go back to April 2024. Caitlin Clark walks off the college basketball court for the last time as an Iowa Hawkeye. She had just broken the all-time NCAA scoring record, men's or women's. She had dragged women's college basketball to television ratings that hadn't been seen since the golden era of the sport. Millions of people who had never watched a women's basketball game in their lives suddenly knew her name, her step-back three, her court vision, and then she entered the WNBA draft. And something unprecedented happened. The entire sports world held its breath. Not just women's basketball fans, not just casual observers. We're talking about people who watch the NFL, the NBA, the Premier League, people who historically changed the channel when women's sports came on, suddenly tuning in, watching, debating, caring. The Indiana Fever's first game with Clark drew more viewers than any WNBA regular season game in history. Read that sentence again. In history. And just like that, the WNBA wasn't a niche sport anymore. But here's where it gets complicated. Because Clark didn't arrive alone. She arrived in a draft class that included Angel Reese, equally magnetic, equally talented, equally polarizing. Where Clark had Iowa, Reese had LSU. Where Clark had a certain fan demographic, Reese had another. Together, they represented something bigger than basketball. They became a mirror. And America doesn't always like what it sees in mirrors. The media coverage split almost immediately. Clark received endorsement deals at a scale the WNBA had never seen for a rookie. Reese received comparisons, critiques, and a level of scrutiny that made many people uncomfortable. Fans chose sides, loudly, aggressively, in comment sections in barbershops and sports bars across the country. And the veterans watched all of this unfold with complicated eyes. Aya Wilson had been the face of this league for years. Two-time MVP. Olympic gold medalist, a player whose dominance on the court is simply undeniable. She had carried the WNBA through seasons where nobody outside the diehard fan base was paying attention. She had shown up, performed at an elite level, and done it all without a fraction of the mainstream visibility that arrived with one rookie class. She noticed. She said so publicly. And suddenly the WNBA had a conversation it had never been forced to have so loudly before, about who gets celebrated, who gets ignored, and why. That conversation did not stay comfortable. It touched race. It touched media bias. It touched the long, complicated history of how American sports culture assigns value to athletes based on factors that have nothing to do with performance on the court. Some people engage with it honestly. Others use it as a weapon. And the league itself, caught in the middle, had to figure out how to grow an audience while managing a cultural firestorm it never anticipated. That's the world season 30 inherits. Not a clean slate, not a fresh start, a lit fuse, because those tensions didn't resolve in the off-season. They simmered, they sharpened. Players gave interviews that got clipped out of context and weaponized online. Fan accounts built entire identities around defending one player by attacking another. Media personalities stake careers on being the loudest voice in a debate that never really ended. And now the actual games are about to start again, which means every single moment is about to be amplified to a level that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. A stare down after a foul, a reaction on the bench, a post-game comment that runs 3 seconds too long, a pre-game photo that gets misread by 3 million people. That is season 30's playing field. And the question is, which players have figured out how to play that field? Because some of them have. And the ones who have are about to completely change how we understand the WNBA's future. There's one player in particular, one move, one calculated decision made in the offseason that almost nobody is talking about, but it may be the most important story of this entire season. There's a move that changes everything. Not a move on the basketball court, a move made in a boardroom, in a negotiation. In a quiet conversation between a player and her team that barely made the news cycle before getting buried under the usual noise. But insiders noticed. And once you understand what it means, you'll see season 30 completely differently. Before we get there, let's establish something important. The WNBA has always had a power structure, and for most of its 30-year history, that structure was simple. The league held the power. Players showed up, performed, accepted contracts that would embarrass their NBA counterparts, and were grateful for the opportunity. That's not an exaggeration. That's documented history. WNBA players were making base salaries that a third-string NBA player would reject without blinking. They played overseas in the off-season, not for fun, not for exposure, but because they had to in order to pay their bills. Some of the greatest women's basketball players in history spent their primes grinding through Russian winters and Turkish leagues just to financially survive. And the league, for a long time, accepted that arrangement as normal. The players didn't. They fought. They negotiated. They organized. The 2020 collective bargaining agreement was a turning point. Better salaries, improved travel, enhanced maternity benefits. Real progress. Hard-won progress. But progress has a way of accelerating once it starts. Because now, Season 30, a new kind of power is entering the equation: marketability. And marketability, in the modern sports economy, is worth more than any contract clause ever written. Here's what that means in real terms. When Caitlin Clark signed her rookie WNBA contract, her base salary was just over $76,000. That number sounds almost insulting given what we watched her do in college. But her endorsement portfolio? Nike, Gatorade, State Farm. Estimates range into the tens of millions of dollars annually. Her WNBA contract is almost irrelevant to her financial life, and that changes the entire dynamic of player power in this league. Because when a player's outside income dwarfs her league salary, she doesn't need the league the way players once did. She has leverage. She has options. She has a platform that exists independently of whatever the WNBA decides to do with her. That is genuinely new territory, and other players are watching. Angel Reese built a brand in her first WNBA season that extended far beyond basketball. Her social media presence, her personality, her willingness to be loud and unapologetic, that combination attracted sponsors and audiences at a speed that surprised even her own management team. Paige Bueckers arrives in Season 30 with a Nike deal already locked in before she plays a single professional minute. Before a single minute. Think about what that signals. It signals that the market has decided these women are valuable regardless of what any league executive thinks. It signals that the old model, where the WNBA controlled the narrative around its players, is quietly becoming obsolete, and that is the move nobody is talking about loudly enough. Several veteran players, names you know, stars who have been in this league for nearly a decade, restructured their representation this offseason. They didn't just find new agents. They built management teams, media teams, business development teams. They stopped thinking of themselves as basketball players with endorsement deals on the side. They started thinking of themselves as brands that happen to play basketball. That shift in identity, it's seismic, because it means these players are no longer waiting for the league to hand them visibility. They're creating it themselves. And some of them are doing it in ways that are about to collide directly, publicly, uncomfortably, with how the WNBA wants to present itself to its growing mainstream audience. The league wants a certain image heading into Season 30. Polished, professional, unified, a story of growth and triumph and unprecedented momentum. But the players have their own stories to tell. And not all of those stories fit neatly into the league's preferred narrative. That collision between institutional control and individual power is already happening behind closed doors. But by mid-season, it won't be behind closed doors anymore. And when it goes public, and will go public, one specific rivalry is going to be at the absolute center of it. A rivalry that goes deeper than basketball, deeper than social media, deeper than anything the WNBA has ever had to manage before. Some rivalries are manufactured, built by media narratives, engineered by highlight packages, designed to sell clicks and keep people arguing in comment sections until the next controversy replaces them. And then there are rivalries that are real, the kind that don't need cameras to exist, the kind that live in the space between two competitors when nobody else is watching, the kind that both people feel in their chest before a game even tips off. The WNBA has one of those right now, and it's bigger, far bigger, than most people have allowed themselves to admit. Let's be precise here, because this story deserves precision. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese were already linked before either of them played a professional minute. Their college programs met in the 2023 NCAA championship game. LSU won. Angel Reese's celebration became one of the most debated moments in women's sports history. Caitlin Clark watched from the losing side. That moment planted a seed. Everything that followed watered it. When they both entered the WNBA draft in 2024, the rivalry didn't just continue. It transformed. In college, it was program against program. Iowa versus LSU. Two fan bases. One trophy. In the pros, it became something more intimate, more personal. Because now they weren't just competing for championships. They were competing for something harder to measure and more important to both of them. The narrative. Who is the face of this new era? Whose story does the league tell when it wants to attract new fans? Whose jersey sells? Whose endorsement deal gets announced on SportsCenter? Whose highlight leads a package? Those questions don't have clean answers. And the absence of clean answers creates friction. Real friction. Because Clark's arrival brought a certain fan base into the WNBA, loud, passionate, predominantly white, largely new to women's basketball. And Reese's presence brought another fan base, equally loud, equally passionate, predominantly black, with deep roots in the culture of women's basketball that predates both of them by decades. Those two fan bases do not always coexist peacefully. Online, the tension regularly explodes into something genuinely ugly. Players get blamed for behavior their fans exhibit. Every on-court interaction between Clark and Reese gets dissected through racial and cultural lenses that the players themselves have said they find exhausting. But here's the part that makes this rivalry truly dangerous heading into season 30. Both women understand exactly what's happening. They're not naive. They're not oblivious. They both sat in front of cameras and carefully navigated questions about each other, measured words, diplomatic answers, the kind of media training that tells you to defuse, not escalate. But defusing a rivalry and ending it are two completely different things. On the court, the competition is ferocious. Reese is one of the most relentless rebounders in the league. Her physical presence, her motor, her refusal to be outworked, those qualities don't disappear because the cameras are watching. If anything, they intensify. Clark's vision and shooting range create matchup problems that no team has fully solved. Her ability to make the spectacular look routine, that step-back three from the logo, that no-look pass through traffic, generates a kind of crowd electricity that changes the energy of entire arenas. When these two teams meet this season, the building will feel different. Every call will be scrutinized. Every physical exchange will be replayed in slow motion. Every reaction on the bench will get screenshotted and posted before the quarter ends. And here's the layer that nobody is discussing openly. Both players are entering season 30 with something to prove that goes beyond wins and losses. Reese wants to silence the voices that spent her entire rookie season questioning her game, her character, and her motives. She had a historic rebounding season, breaking the all-time WNBA rookie rebounds record, and still felt like sections of the media refused to celebrate her the way they celebrated others. That chip on her shoulder, it didn't shrink in the offseason. It grew. Clark, meanwhile, carries away a fan base that sometimes loves her in ways that create problems she didn't ask for. She can't control what her supporters say online. She can't control how her visibility affects the women who were here before her. But she carries the consequences of it anyway. Both of them are walking into season 30 carrying weight that would break most people. And the first time they share a court this season, something is going to happen. Something that will define the entire year. But that moment, as explosive as it promises to be, isn't actually the biggest story of season 30. The biggest story is quieter, older, and far more consequential. Before the rookies arrived, before the viral moments, before the sold-out arenas and the celebrity courtside seats and the national television deals that suddenly made everyone pretend they cared about women's basketball all along. Before all of it, there was Aya Wilson. And if you want to understand the deepest fault line running through season 30, you need to understand what Aya Wilson represents. Not just as a basketball player, but as a symbol of everything this league was, everything it fought to become, and everything it's now at risk of forgetting. Because here is the uncomfortable truth that the highlight packages won't tell you. Aya Wilson might be the greatest player in the WNBA right now. Not might be, is 2 MVPs, 2 championships, 2 Olympic gold medals, a defensive presence that reshapes how opponents build their entire game plans, A scoring ability that operates at a level of efficiency that makes analysts reach for words that don't quite exist yet. She is, by almost every objective measure, the standard. And yet, when the conversation turns to the WNBA's new era, when networks talk about the league's growth, when sponsors announce partnerships, when casual fans explain why they start watching, her name is often the third or fourth mentioned. Sometimes not at all. That's not an accident. And Wilson knows it. She has said so, carefully, precisely, with the kind of controlled frustration that comes from someone who has spent years learning exactly how much truth she's allowed to speak before the narrative turns on her. Last season, she posted on social media about feeling overlooked, about watching a rookie class receive levels of marketing attention that veterans with superior resumes had never been offered, about the quiet, grinding injustice of being the best player in your league and somehow still being treated as supporting cast in your own story. The response was immediate and divided. Some fans rallied behind her completely. Veterans across the league, current and former, publicly agreed. The conversation about how the WNBA markets its stars, who gets the premium endorsement conversations, whose face appears on the league's biggest promotional materials. That conversation exploded overnight. Others pushed back, accused her of diminishing the legitimate excitement around new players, suggested she was threatened by younger talent rather than frustrated by systemic inequity. Wilson didn't back down, and heading into season 30, she is hungry in a way that feels almost dangerous for the rest of the league. Because here's what happens when the greatest player in a sport feels disrespected. She stops playing for highlight clips. She stops playing for narratives. She plays to destroy every argument that dares to place her beneath someone else. Training camp reports from the Las Vegas Aces this offseason use words like locked in and different level, and something has shifted. Players who have practiced alongside Wilson for years said she arrived this preseason with an intensity they hadn't seen before. When a player of her caliber decides to make a personal statement through her performance, records fall, opponents get embarrassed, and the conversation has no choice but to follow. But Wilson's storyline isn't just about individual redemption. It's about what her presence and her frustration reveals about the WNBA's deepest structural problem. This league has always had stars. Remarkable, generational, world-class stars. Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, Tamika Catchings, Sue Bird. Women who built careers so extraordinary that any honest sports historian would place them among the greatest athletes of their generation. Most of America couldn't name half of them at their peak. Now, suddenly, the league is flooded with mainstream attention, and the question that Wilson's story forces everyone to confront is brutal in its simplicity. Was this league ever actually invisible? Or did people just choose not to look? Because if it was a choice, if the talent was always there and the audience simply decided women's basketball wasn't worth their attention, then the current explosion of popularity isn't just exciting. It's an indictment of sports media, of sponsorship culture, of the way American audiences assign value to athletic achievement based on factors that have nothing to do with the game itself. Wilson understands this. She carries it. And this season, she intends to make it impossible to ignore. But even her story, as powerful as it is, connects to something larger. A shift happening at the ownership level, the broadcast level, the business level, that is quietly rewriting the rules of what the WNBA actually is, and who it actually belongs to.